Hey Jennifer, I'm trying to think of other names for Moms for Liberty. Which one do you think is funnier? Females for Fascism or Homemakers for Hitler?
Ooh, those are both great, but have you heard of Twatsies?
Oh no, that one takes the cake.
That just made me think of another one. Bakers for Bigotry.
Nice. Hello and welcome to Moms for Book Liberty.
The podcast where a couple of moms fight back against groups trying to control what our kids can read.
With each episode focusing on a specific book that has found itself on the chopping block of censorship. E and P cartoons on Twitter, editorial and political cartoons for making that meme based on Family Feud. Everyone knows what that is, right, Jennifer?
Yes, everyone should.
Yeah, I mean,
Harvey?
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, I love that show, but to see that, to open up Twitter and see.
Yeah, so the tweet says, and it has the board.
The Family Feud board.
The Family Feud board, and it says, give me another name for Moms for Liberty. Top 10 answers on the board.
And then that's what we went through on our teaser there. Other notable favorites are Planned Parenthood.
Minivan Taliban.
Book banning Barbies? Was that one?
Yes, book ban Barbies. Bitches for Bigotry.
Oh man, it just keeps getting better. And some of the
Assholes with casseroles.
Assholes with casseroles. Hey, not every homemaker is an asshole with a casserole.
Right.
This is just sort of a funny take on Moms for Liberty since, all the shit that they're doing these days.
Yeah.
I mean, what else? You can't just sit back and be quiet. Like, even making a funny meme like this is a form of resistance.
Yeah, and Moms for Liberty found it funny. They retweeted it.
Why did they retweet it?
Well, they think they're living rent-free in our heads. And I'm like, no, you're not an ex that we're stalking. You're just someone who's very dangerous.
Exactly.
To our school system.
Exactly. And I don't think living rent-free applies when, they're the ones that are supplying, the humor. We're laughing at them.
Right.
Right? And like you said, also concerned about, the dangers that they're posing in our schools.
Right.
It's and in our society. Yeah. But the fact that it's just funny that the fact that they retweeted it, we wouldn't have discovered this glorious meme had they not retweeted it. So thank you for resharing.
Appreciate it because it was a good laugh.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just use this opportunity to remind you guys that we also have a Twitter account at moms4 booklib.
Yes.
Tweet us your alternative names for Moms for Liberty. Maybe, if they're funny enough, we will read them on our next episode.
Oh, and it looks like Minivan Taliban was trending on Twitter too.
Oh.
So that's kind of funny.
Hey, I own a minivan, but I don't take offense to that statement. I think it's hilarious.
Right.
I also make casseroles, but I know I'm not an asshole.
Right. I think that's a problem. They know.
Yeah.
They can call themselves joyful warriors all they want.
Oh my God.
But in the next sentence, they're calling for war. So we're not scared.
Barbie would never ban books.
No.
I mean, have you seen the Netflix TV show, Barbie?
I haven't. Oh, you know what? The girls watch it all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of older, but it's so funny. I love it. And the new movie. I want to see the new movie.
Me too.
Oh my gosh.
It looks hilarious.
Yeah.
Ken Barbie would build her, her whole library.
Yeah, he would build her a book banned library.
Yeah.
Which is everyone's dream. Well, not everyone's dream. Which is every Moms for Book Liberty's dream. Not Moms for Liberty.
We're well on our way to building one thanks to Moms for Liberty.
No, a sad thing that you could make your own library out of all the banned books.
Right.
Which, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a bookstore pop up where it was we only sell books that have been banned or challenged because there's so many.
They're starting to pop up. There's a free library in not Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen?
The other place, Baskin Robbins.
Oh, okay. Is it just banned books?
And they have inside their ice cream shop a whole shelf of banned books.
Oh, I love that.
And
Baskin Robbins?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's great. Oh, and then there was something you shared with me where anyone between the ages of 10 to 18 could request a copy of a banned book.
Yes.
At what website?
Just Us Oasis on Instagram.
So at Just Us Oasis.
Yes.
Okay. We can put that in our show notes too.
Yeah, anyone 10 to 18 can request an LGBTQ plus book.
Alphabet Mafia.
So tongue tie.
Yeah.
Tongue twister, not tongue tie.
So examples like Just Us Oasis and even this, silly meme by political editorial cartoons are great examples of, resisting against all the craziness that we're seeing, especially here in Florida, but not just Florida, but nationwide with all of the, Supreme Court decisions that have taken place, you know, the end of affirmative action, which is ridiculous because it's the end of affirmative action, but it's not the end of legacy admissions.
Why is that allowed?
I have no idea. Because the Supreme Court is fucked up, probably.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Supreme Court being fucked up, did you hear about the whole wedding website debacle?
Oh, that is beyond wild.
Doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you know about it? Because, like, it's kind of hard to explain to someone.
It's this web developer who really never developed websites before.
Right.
And apparently it was, like, her dream to do.
Uh-huh.
And she didn't want to do gay weddings.
Okay.
So she went to the court and said, I don't want to do this. And I think she made up a plaintiff.
Yeah, because
not a plaintiff.
Like a complaint or
right. Someone who wanted her services and she wanted to deny it.
So her name's Lori Smith and she did this in Colorado. And initially, I think the state of Colorado was like, what are you talking about? You don't have any requests. And then magically a request appeared.
Right. And she provided names, which that person really exists, but he's not gay. Mm-hmm. He's married, I think, with children.
15 years married to a woman in California.
And he's a web designer himself.
Has his own web design company.
Doesn't need your services.
His name is Stuart, but he doesn't want his last name to be shared for safety reasons. Understandably so. But apparently his husband's name was Mike.
Stuart and Mike.
Yeah. And he didn't know that he was on this lawsuit until like a year after it had been in the case, or in the courts. Which is crazy. So, I mean, it's just sort of an example of the ethical and legal flags that we're seeing in the Supreme Court.
And no due diligence. Like, why didn't they speak to these complainants?
Right. It's not that hard to, I mean, anyone can Google someone, you know, and find out that that Stuart and Mike aren't a real couple.
Right.
You know, or that they were made up. Like, I don't know. It seems like just such a weird case with not a lot of details. It's almost like someone was just trying to just kind of cover up these details. Understandably so, because it would make the Supreme Court look bad.
Right.
Which they're doing a great job of making themselves look bad already. With the end of loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
And the end of affirmative action. So speaking on affirmative action, you know, not for our listeners, because I'll assume that our listeners understand how devastating this is, but for our listeners who want to explain it to those family members or those friends who maybe don't understand and who are maybe sort of, you know, fighting with you about it. But basically, like, universities like Harvard, which I don't really like Harvard, but it's a great example. Harvard, you know, they pay a recruiter to go out and look for Black and brown high school students that fit their image of a student, of a scholar, right? So someone who maybe doesn't have the money to go to a prep school,
right? Someone
who doesn't have the money to even take prep classes, like SAT prep classes to do well in their SAT.
And still excelled.
But still knocked out the SAT, you know? So there's one example of a Black student who did really well on her SATs, but she just went to a regular public school in a predominantly Black community, and that's how she got to Harvard.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. Yeah. Like, why are we going against this? I don't get it.
So Harvard flew out to her and was like, hey, you're really smart. Come to Harvard. And she was like, okay. And she went to Harvard.
But a rich family can get their deadbeat son.
Right. Who did not do well on the SATs.
Right.
Because
with all the tutors and everything. And still was mediocre.
Because his white granddaddy went there and his daddy went there and donated a very generous amount of money to their school.
And I heard that they brought this up as the Asian community being the ones that wanted to get rid of this, but it's not. The person who brought it forward was not Asian.
Oh, I didn't know. I don't know those details. That's interesting, though. So on top of, you know, the Supreme Court's decisions to end affirmative action and get rid of any loan forgiveness, Florida has some fun new bills that we briefly discussed in our last episode. But I just wanted to shed some light on House Bill 1069, because we didn't talk about this in our last episode. But there's just one sentence that just kind of sits with me the wrong way.
Yes.
So it says, teach abstinence from sexual activity outside of marriage as the expected standard for all school-age students. Now, while I'm not going to personally teach that to my kids because I'm not an idiot and I know that teenagers are going to explore, you know, things sexually, and I don't want them to get pregnant.
Right.
So I will have those discussions, and I will do everything I can to make sure that my kids don't end up in a situation where, you know, they have an unwanted pregnancy. And I don't think abstinence is the way to do that. And and the data supports me on that.
Yes.
Like, there's been lots of data that abstinence only is not effective. If anything, it's harmful, and it results in more teenage pregnancies.
Yeah.
But I'm not here to fight that, okay? If that's what they've been doing that in Florida for a long time. But the rest of the sentence says, while teaching the benefits of monogamous heterosexual marriage. And that's what I have a problem with.
Right. Why can we teach that and not...
I mean, why do they even have to... Can't they just, like, end the sentence at just...
marriage.
Not even marriage. Yeah. They could just say, you know, while teaching the benefits of marriage. Like, which is... I still have a problem with that because, like, you don't have to fucking get married.
Right. But that's what they want to teach.
Right.
You know, like,
and also with, like, today's interest rates and inflation, like, getting married and having kids is impossible.
Yeah, it is.
Finding a job. Like, all kids are doing now when they get out of college is, like, I just need to find a fucking job and an apartment that I can afford.
Which is impossible.
Right.
Rent is ridiculous.
I can't even imagine.
And then now we're losing... I was telling you, house insurance is going up. Everything. I don't know.
We're all going to be homeless.
Yes.
But, so yeah, I have a problem with that. But here's another thing that gets me. It's like, if you've got two lesbians, right? They're not going to get pregnant.
No.
I don't know if they understand the biology of this, but, like, homosexual relationships don't often lead to unwanted pregnancies.
But I think that's why they don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah, because it threatens the 1950s American family.
Right.
Of, like, a man and a wife and two kids and a white picket fence and white skin.
Yeah.
And the woman is making her casseroles.
Barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
That's the issue I have with 1069, which went into effect July 1st.
I know we don't have it pulled up, but how is, well, they still haven't told us how that'll affect the books. I'm waiting for the school to put out, like, how they're going to deal with this new law.
And schools don't know either.
No.
So they wait for the state, which is scary. Because,
and the state doesn't give them clear rules because
of lawsuits and potential
litigation.
And
they want to keep it very vague
so that people are scared.
Yes.
You know, the ACLU put out a response to all these bills, kind of explaining it in layman's terms, saying that 1069 would censor classroom discussions on sexual orientation or gender identity all the way up through 8th grade, which is basically an expansion of the K through 3rd grade Don't Say Gay bill. But then, you know, they threw that heterosexual marriage in there, which is just so discriminatory.
Which means they can talk about certain...
Yes, that's why they did that.
Right.
So that they can have... Because remember in our last episode we talked about, well, Bluey's mom and dad kissed in the pool. Well, that's a heterosexual... I mean, they're dogs, but it's a heterosexual marriage. You know, so that's why they put that language in there, I bet. You know, and this is just... Not only does it infringe on parental rights to ensure that their transgender students' pronouns are respected, but it infringes on anyone in the queer community's rights. Teachers who are gay.
Right.
Teachers who have different pronouns. Parents who are gay.
Yeah, like how do you deal with a family with two moms that goes to school?
They're not important.
Yeah.
You know, they're the ones that need to be, according to these bills, they need to shut up and be quiet.
Yeah, they definitely want to push everyone back into a closet.
So the executive director of Florida's ACLU, Tiffany Lennon, responded with this statement. All Florida students and families deserve to be protected, respected, and embraced. And these laws do just the opposite. Despite the administration's rhetoric to the contrary, this is about a curtailment of fundamental liberties and state government overreach into our schools, families, and healthcare. These laws do nothing to protect liberty and freedoms. The only winners are those who want to see a bigger, more invasive government, i.e. Moms for Fucking Liberty.
Which the hypocrisy of them using their tagline, we don't co-parent with the government.
They literally have t-shirts that say that. The irony is...
They wear them while they hug on a politician that they're endorsing.
Exactly. It's just so embarrassing and just such a testament to their ignorance and their lack of critical thinking skills.
Or they're lying.
Well, they're the puppets being controlled by the puppet masters who are the ones that are lying, right? But these are just like, forgive me, but these are just like a lot of the times unsuspecting literal moms that think they're protecting their kids, but really they're just being used. They're pawns in the big game of, you know, discrimination and taking away our fundamental liberties.
And we talked about this in another episode about the umbrella, you know,
with the
Duggar family. Mm. And so I'm seeing a lot of memes of that, like they're protecting their family and there's like a rainbow falling.
Oh, the rainbow, yeah. Oh, you know what I saw?
Or a shield.
There was a great Christian influencer on TikTok and she was like, I fixed this meme to show that instead of Jesus protecting their family from the rainbow, Jesus was like protecting the rainbow or something like that. Because, you know, she goes on, and I love when Christian influencers do this, she goes on to say that like out of all of the words that Jesus Christ spoke, according to the Bible, none of those words were spoken against, you know, the queer community.
Right.
And if anything, it was the opposite. You know, there's a Bible quote that says, give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. I think it's pretty clear here, the hand of the wicked is the government and the Supreme Court Justice and Moms for Liberty, you know, making all of these actions of discrimination towards marginalized groups.
Right.
What else does it say? I mean, there's so many examples.
I mean, even in the 10 Commandments, they say, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain. Mm-hmm. And when they use God as their reason for attacking these people, to me, that's using his name in vain.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've already said that before about the Leviticus that says no man shall lie with another man. That was mistranslated and is only in the English versions of the Bible. In other languages such as German, that Leviticus quote says no man shall lie with a child.
Right.
So it's talking about pedophilia. It's not talking about homosexuals.
But to them, homosexuals are pedophiles. Somehow they've made that connection.
Yeah.
I think to justify their hatred.
Another thing that really pisses me off about Moms for Liberty is, they're trying to, and I think you said this, Jennifer, you explained it to me. It's like they're creating this narrative about like mothers protecting their children.
Yes. Like it's something about, don't get in a mom's way between her and her child or, like you'll feel the wrath. Something to that effect they tweeted or they said at their conference recently.
I feel like they'd say that all the time.
Yeah.
They're constantly like, oh, we're mama bears protecting our kids.
Their whole, stick is they're moms, and they're protecting their kids. And we are not moms, we're something else. We're groomers.
What the fuck are we?
And I'm like, no, we're also moms and we're fighting back now because we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we don't think that you have any right to say shit over our own kids.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care how you want to raise your kid.
Right.
Raise them into little bigots if you want.
But don't try and raise ours into bigots.
No.
Ours are going to be accepting and loving kids that grow up to be accepting and loving adults that actually make positive changes for our society and that don't pass ridiculous bills that prevent parents from making medical decisions for their own kids. Like now we're talking about Senate Bill 254, which threatens the lives of trans children in Florida and criminalizes healthcare providers. And we're not talking about bottom surgery or top surgery. We're not talking about anything with a scalpel.
Right.
We're just talking about hormone blockers or even, medicine that makes their kids less depressed and prevents suicide. Like they're just trying to make their kids happy. And there are so many parents out there that want the best for their children that actually will accept them as trans people. But Senate Bill 254 is making that impossible.
And it should be up to the parents. Like who's making
parental rights
and medical advice. They're not just going all willy-nilly. It's a doctor is saying this is okay.
Yeah.
But here comes another white man, governor or whatever.
Any sort of politician.
Coming in and saying, no, I know better than the women. I know better than the doctors. Mm-hmm. Listen to me. I know what I'm doing.
Right. It's one thing when you take away a woman's right to reproductive freedom, but it's another thing when you're taking away parents' rights to keeping their kids safe and happy and preventing suicide. All of the medical freedoms that are being stripped in this country is just devastating. We're going to have to stop because this podcast is going to get too depressing if we keep talking about it. But yeah, I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast. Yeah. And we're encouraging you to get angry and to do something, to speak up and be that loud majority because we need it.
Yeah. Nikki Haley said at the Moms for Liberty, she said, never stand in the way of moms on mission. And you know what? I agree.
Yeah,
don't get in our way.
Yeah, because you know what my mission is to raise a child who's not a homophobic, ignorant, hateful person.
You awful woman. How dare you?
I know, right? Well, on that note, I think we should kind of switch gears here and talk about the book that we're covering today, which is called Melissa by Alex Gino. Did I say that name right?
I believe so.
Gino. And this book was initially called George.
Yes.
But the name was changed to as sort of like a sign of respect and solidarity in ending dead naming.
Yes.
Which is a thing that happens to trans people.
Yeah, the book came out in 2015, and then it was changed in 2022. Okay. And it was for that reason.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that just goes to show, like, the advancements that we have made as a society. There are groups in our country, in our state, that are advancing and, being more inclusive of historically marginalized groups, such as trans groups.
Yeah.
But, we're still having to fight for those advancements.
And I thought it was really interesting because initially the author wanted to call the book Girl George.
Oh.
In reference to Boy George. Yes.
But the editor was like, no one's going to get that reference. I got it.
Right. Well, I guess because it's middle grade, right? In school. So,
yeah.
And so they dropped it to just George. And at the time, the author, they didn't realize how much power they had as the author. So they just kind of went with it. They were just excited Scholastics wanted to pick them up.
Right. Humble.
Yes.
Very humble.
And so Scholastics also mentioned to them it would be better to leave it as George because they would get less resistance from boys reading the book.
Interesting. Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
So that kind of,
well, then the author released another one called Rick, and that one's still called Rick.
Okay.
And that one, I can see the same idea, like encouraging boys to read it. My daughter read it, and she said it was about a boy named Rick who was questioning his sexual orientation. Again, middle school. Again, nice reminder for those listening out there. Middle schoolers have lots of hormones.
Well, in middle grade...
Sex hormones. Okay, that's when they start realizing that things feel good.
In middle grade books, that always confuses me because I think middle school, but it's actually 8 to 12-year-olds.
So that's a good point. But this book doesn't mention anything about things feeling good. No. It doesn't talk about masturbation. Like, there's no boyfriend, girlfriend. There's no romance in this book at all. No. So yeah, I want to be clear there because, and I'm so happy that we're actually covering a book but middle schoolers could read this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not like a baby book. A middle schooler wouldn't pick this up and be like, oh, this is like below me. They would still read it. But to that point, an 8-year-old could read it.
Right.
It is very age appropriate. I think there's one, I don't know, we're going to have to look up if Moms for Liberty did their book report on this.
With the dirty magazines?
Oh, well, no, that wasn't the part I was thinking of. Because, they did mention dirty magazines, but that's literally all they say is dirty magazines.
Right, and either you know what it is or you don't know.
Yeah, like, and maybe that encourages your kid to be like, Mom, what's a dirty magazine? And then you can have a conversation about what your kids are reading. You know, because eventually you're going to want your kids to know those things so that they're not the laughingstock of their university.
Right.
But the one part I'm referring to is when Melissa, she says something to the effect of, the thing hanging between my legs is what makes me, the most unhappy.
Oh,
something like that.
Okay.
So she, refers to her genitalia not matching her identity. And I think the words she uses are the thing between my legs.
Right.
But that's it.
Which is how a lot of parents who don't use penis, vagina, they'll say the thing or your private part.
That's why I wonder in Moms for Liberty's book report, how they always like to say, oh, this is how many times the F word was used. And
that one doesn't have anything like that on their list.
Oh, okay. Because there's no bad words in this book at all.
But I did think it was funny that they have 2 separate lists, one for the book George and one for the book Melissa, and they're not the same
book.
I thought that was really funny because I'm like, let me compare them. They're not the same. A lot of the same quotes, but one is longer than the other. Yeah. Like they lost interest halfway through Melissa, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're like, wait, I think I've read this before.
Right. Yeah, they have issues with everything, pretty much, that she has an issue with her identity, that she's transgender, that she feels like a girl in a boy's body. They even had an issue with when the teacher gets upset, when the teacher tells George, and I know you'll turn into a fine young man.
Oh, yeah.
And the word man hit like a pile of rocks falling on George's skull. It was 100 times worse than boy, and she couldn't breathe. They had a problem with that.
I have an issue with that because the teacher needs to use more gender-inclusive language. Come on. You know what? I think teachers now, and I'm sure Moms for Liberty is going to hate hearing this, but teachers now, they know not to use gender-exclusive language. So instead of boys and girls, they'll say like cats and dogs. Yeah. Or they'll say my friends, like welcome my little friends. Yeah. Or like if you're at Disney, they'll say friends of the mouse, which really pisses them off. Because Disney's gender inclusive now. I let someone get pissed off in my presence and go on a rant about how Disney said, they don't say boys and girls anymore. They say friends of Mickey Mouse. I'm like, how dare they?
Right. Like, why does that get you so upset?
I don't know.
Is your manhood so easily affected that if someone isn't fragile, doesn't call you a man directly, it makes you feel like less of a man?
The answer is yes.
And the same thing with, but moms are having this issue too, because they'll say, oh, I'm a real woman. We have one of the Mom for Liberty ladies loves to wear a shirt that says, I'm a real woman.
Wow, that's just, you don't see that often. You don't see feminine ego fragility as often as you see masculine ego fragility. So, but it's there. It's there.
It's there. Yeah. And I'm like, why is your womanhood so easily threatened?
I don't know.
I don't care what another woman has or doesn't have.
That reminds me too. It's like they wear all those shirts and they like have their flags, and don't even get me started on the people that think Trump is still president. But like their main argument has been like, I don't like it when you rub it in my face, and it's being rubbed in my face all the time. And I'm driving to the store and I look to my left and I see like a giant Ford 350 pickup with giant rims and like a huge flag with Trump's face on it.
Next to a rebel flag.
And it's like, then there's like flags that are literally like flying out of the bed of their truck. Yes. One that says like fuck Biden.
Right.
That's your identity that you're rubbing in my face. And I'm pretty sure there's a few traffic violations that you're making.
Right. And then they get out of the truck and they have a hat, shirt.
Yeah. That says make America great again.
Right.
But speaking of that, I am actually excited to see the battle between DeSantis and Trump.
Yeah, me too. Well, have you heard there's going to be, I don't know how true this is, a cage match between Elon Musk, Musk. Thank you. And
he changed his name to Ellen.
Oh, sorry. And then the Facebook guy.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have a cage match.
Like physically?
Apparently.
No.
Like who? I don't know.
I mean, I'll watch it.
I won't. Like I can't. Has to be the lamest fight I can imagine.
I mean, all I know about that is that Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook's version of Twitter.
Threads.
Yeah, Threads, which I was talking to someone about. They're like, yeah, well, at least it's better than Twitter. I'm like, how is it better than Twitter? And they're like, well, Elon Musk. I'm like, oh, okay, so Mark Zuckerberg is like the lesser evil? Like, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not huge on Twitter. So what I figured out recently is like they limited how many posts you can see if you're not verified or if you don't have.
That sucks.
I don't know.
So that's that. I can see why people would go to Threads, but let's just remind everyone the things that Facebook did during a few elections and the homophobic rhetoric that they contributed to by actually like sharing and resharing and sort of like putting these homophobic posts up on a pedestal. Yeah. So it's almost like they're both evil. I don't know. Maybe you could argue one is less evil than the other. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, no. They're two rich guys going after each other. I mean,
two straight cis white males.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
But the point of this was I would love to see Trump and
DeSantis
in a cage match. I would actually watch that.
Yeah, my money's on DeSantis though, in terms of winning. Although I would love to see Trump beat his ass.
Yeah.
This is a weird conversation. Wait, I don't condone violence of any kind.
But they're agreeing to it, you know? I don't mind boxing matches and like MMA fights.
It's a sport.
It's a sport. Yeah, exactly.
A gentleman's sport.
And then we could throw in a real MMA fighter in there, a female one.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And watch her kick their asses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would pay for that.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, let's get that ball rolling.
Anyways.
Back to the book. You may have learned by now that this is not one of our clean episodes.
Yes.
Although this could be argued that this book is a junior book. Like we said, the age is 8 and up.
Yeah, the book is junior. The episode isn't because we've used them.
It's hard for
adult
us
language.
To be junior.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was saying, I love that there's a book that is age appropriate that does talk about, transphobia and the challenges that trans children are facing. This is a great book that sheds light on such an important topic. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we do understand the importance of age appropriateness.
Right.
And, there are certain books that 8-year-olds maybe aren't ready to read. Mm-hmm. Some might be, but, overall, most 8-year-olds probably aren't ready to read All Boys Aren't Blue, for example.
Right.
But they can read George.
Exactly.
Or Melissa.
Melissa, yeah.
Or both. No, they're the same book.
Yeah, buy each one.
Yeah, and actually there's a link in our show notes to where you can buy Melissa. And how about, do you want to go into the awards?
Oh, yes. It was the #1 book challenged in 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Okay.
And it made the top 10 list in 2017, 2016, and it landed on the top 100 most banned books of 2010 to 2019. So like that decade, it was number 5.
Okay.
So it's been banned quite a bit.
Okay.
And then it's won the Lambada Literary Award, the Stonewall Award, the Children's Choice Book Awards, Debut Author, and the Juvenile California Book Award. It received 4-starred reviews from Booklist, Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and School Library Journal, and was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award and the Dorothy Canfield Fisher Children's Book Award. Also honored with the E.B. White Read Aloud Award, and finalist for the Georgia Children's Book Award. So that's a lot of accolades.
Yeah, I mean, that's like my favorite part of when we do these episodes. It's like, look at how many awards it's been given by children's organizations.
Right.
And it still manages to piss so many people off. It's like, there's definitely 2 different camps here. And which camp do you want to be a part of? But yeah, let's jump into it.
And the thing is, like, liberty means we get to choose if we want to read it or not.
I just don't. You know what it is? It's their attempt to gaslight us. Their attempt to turn the tables and make us. That's what gaslighting is.
Yeah.
We know what liberty means. And they're taking away our liberty.
Exactly.
And of, trying to expose our children to diverse voices, which is not a bad thing. What's really cool is when you pick up a book and you have no idea what it's about, as opposed to, like, a lot of people know what this book is about, so they go into it knowing it's about a trans child. And I picked it up not really knowing it.
Okay.
Which is, I don't know how that happened to me, but sometimes I do live under a rock. But I picked it up not knowing what it was about. And, someone recommended it to me. I was like, okay, so I'm going to read it. And, the character's name is George, but the pronouns are she, her.
Yes.
And so I'm like, what's going on here? So the first introduction of the first picture that gets painted to you as the reader is George coming home from school, going into her bathroom with a bunch of fashion magazines.
Yes.
And hiding in her bathroom as she, indulges in this like guilty pleasure of hers, but her name is George. So then you start to put the pieces together, especially when you get to this line on page 3. George picked up an issue from last April that she had looked through countless times before. She browsed the busy pages with a crisp flip, flip, flip that stirred up the faint smell of paper. 2 girls sat laughing on a blanket, their arms around each other's shoulders. One wore a striped bikini. The other wore a polka dot one piece with cutouts at the hips. If George were there, she would fit right in, giggling and linking her arms in theirs. She would wear a bright pink bikini, and she would have long hair that her new friend would love to braid. They would ask her name, and she would tell them, "My name is Melissa," which just gives me the goosebumps reading. It's just so sweet, and it's so wholesome.
It's so innocent, this is not going to make your child trans.
No, it's not going to make your son want a pink polka dot bikini with cutouts at the waist. Although I want one,
unless they already wanted it.
Bikini, exactly.
Right.
Which he might be reading it, they might be reading it because they already have those feelings.
Right. It's not going to create those feelings. Mm-hmm. It will just
validate.
Thank you.
Exactly. So she's in 4th grade, and her class is reading Charlotte's Web, which was Charlotte's Web written by E.B. White.
I've never read Charlotte's Web.
Oh my gosh, it's pretty good. My daughter loved it. It's sad.
I've heard it's sad. Yeah,
the spider dies. Charlotte.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what they open up.
Which I learned this in this book because
spoiler alert. Yeah. So Melissa's really sad, and she cries in class, and then she gets bullied by Rick about crying.
Oh, is that why the second book is... Oh my God, I'm so dumb sometimes.
No, it's okay. I mean, you're not dumb. But I didn't know that either until my friend told me. But Rick is a book based on a character that debuts in Melissa. And so Rick is like Melissa's bully, which is interesting because Rick is bullying people that are different, even though Rick inside feels different.
Which happens a lot.
Right. So which really makes me want to read Rick.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely now
Yeah.
Can I say definitely again?
Sure, definitely.
Definitely. Because...
But yeah, so Melissa cries at the thought of Charlotte dying, and that's when her teacher's like, "You're going to grow up to be a wonderful man one day," which we've already covered. Like, come on, let's use inclusive language, like people or human or individual.
Right.
There's so many alternatives. But, it is a good example of how times have changed.
Yeah.
And how we can do better as individuals.
And I'll admit that's something I would probably still say. Mm-hmm. And I have to work on it. Like it's a reminder that you have to be more inclusive with your language.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it's not hard, or it's not easy, but it's also not impossible.
Right.
So yeah, then, the teacher tells them that they're going to do a play on Charlotte's Web, and everyone gets to try out or audition for a part, and immediately Melissa wants to be Charlotte.
Yes.
And so she's super self-conscious about this. And how does the exchange go with Kelly?
George reluctantly tells her best friend Kelly, who is so freaking awesome, that she wants to be Charlotte. And of course, Kelly is supportive and encourages it. George goes to try out for Charlotte, but she says, "Who cares if you aren't really a girl?"
Oh, and this really hurts Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows that she's...
Yeah, no one knows.
Right.
And one of my favorite parts is when Kelly's like, "Who cares if you want to be Charlotte? You're not actually a girl, right?"
Right.
And then George or Melissa doesn't say anything. But that's like the first clue that Kelly gets that Melissa is trans.
Right. But they're 4th graders, so she doesn't really connect the dots.
No. Yeah, I love that about this book. The author does such a great job of like writing them as true 4th graders.
Right.
Like the wholesomeness, the innocence.
Yes.
They do a really good job at channeling like what 4th grade, and I know what 4th graders are like.
Right.
And this paints a really accurate picture of Kelly not really understanding and George not really understanding how to express herself to Kelly.
Yeah, it is very much, if you read it, very 4th grade. Mm-hmm. So they start practicing. And Kelly's the sweetest girl, right? She's enthusiastic. She encourages George at this point to just follow her dreams, Mm-hmm. Like, you can do it. You can be Charlotte. You'll be awesome.
She even says, like, you make a better Charlotte than me. And George, does a really good job auditioning.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter because George is...
Right, because George was supposed to audition for the boy part, which was... Wilbur.
Which is the pig.
Okay.
But you don't know that.
I don't know that.
That's okay. Wilbur's a pig.
And so when she goes to audition, even though she's supposed to do the boy part, mm-hmm. she goes in and does Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And Miss Udall does not like that.
You're right. Miss Udall does not like that. So after George knocks it out of the park with her Charlotte audition, Miss Udall says, "George, what was that?" "I," started George, but there were no words to finish the sentence. Was that supposed to be some kind of joke? Because it wasn't very funny. "It wasn't a joke. I want to be Charlotte." George's voice sounded much smaller now that she was speaking her own words. I can't very well cast you as Charlotte. I have too many girls who want the part. Besides, imagine how confused people would be. Now, if you're interested in being Wilbur, that's a possibility. Or maybe Templeton. He's a funny guy." No, thanks. I wanted, okay then, Miss Udell eyed George oddly. For now, we need to get into the room and get ready to go. Would you hold the door for me? And then it goes on, to explain how George is feeling inside. And George says, stupid, stupid, stupid body, stupid brain, stupid boys, stupid girls, stupid everything. She kicked at the leg of her desk, knocking it into Emma's chair in front of her. Emma turned back to give George a dirty look. So George is clearly not being understood. She doesn't feel understood. She doesn't feel validated. She's confused. The gender roles are very traditional here at this school.
And it's sad to see that because she was so excited to try out.
Yeah.
And then kind of like... such a downer to be told, like, are you playing a prank? Like, do you think this is funny?
Just such deflation. And also, the night before, George almost came out to her mom. Remember? Like,
yes.
She, in her head, she was like, what if I am a girl? And then George's mom says, George, whatever it is, you can tell me. Mom took George's hand in one of her own and covered it with the other. Whatever happens in your life, you can share and I will love you. You will always be my little boy and that will never change. Even when you grow up to be an old man, I will still love you as my son. Which at the beginning of that sentence, you're like, yeah, yes, Mom, yes. Right. And then it's like, oh, no. But, in her defense...
She thought he was gay.
Right. And this, I guess, is this book like set in the 90s maybe or something? Or is it set in an earlier time?
Yeah. Where they don't talk about cell phone. Oh, no. Well, Kelly has a cell phone.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we can't make assumptions. But even now, it's hard for parents to understand.
Yeah.
That their child might have a different gender identity. And we covered this in a couple episodes ago, that the incidence for being gender atypical is just as prevalent, if not more, than the incidence of having a cleft palate, for example. And that's just to put it in perspective for people. Like, we all know someone who has a cleft palate, which means someone who is gender atypical. Right. And gender atypical could mean anything from, maybe having feminine tendencies as a homosexual man, or from, being a trans woman.
Or non-binary.
Or non-binary, or asexual, or maybe a little bit of both. Like, right. It's not very well understood, but it's starting to become a little bit more understood.
Yeah. So I think that was the issue there. The mom thought he was going to come out as gay, not as trans. So, yeah.
So, long story short, George doesn't get the part. Kelly gets the part.
Yes.
And it sort of kind of rubbed him the wrong way because she's so excited because she doesn't totally understand, like, the importance. Which, I mean, how could she? So actually, he ends up choosing to be the stagehand because it helps Charlotte, and that sort of gives him, like, a measure of peace because he's like, oh, well, if I can't be Charlotte, at least I can play a role in, like, helping Charlotte. Okay. Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was nice because he could have just not shown up at all. Mm-hmm. She could have not shown up at all.
Right. She could have just, like, been super mopey about it. But remember the part where Melissa, like, actually puts something on the back of the other bully's back?
Oh, the paint, right?
Yeah. She paints some jerk on Jeff's t-shirt, and then Jeff proceeds to beat George up until George vomits, and then that's when we meet the principal.
Yes.
So tell me about the principal.
Okay, so the principal, I think this was really important. So they're in the principal's office, and I think they sent Rick out, and she's just speaking to George at this point. So as the principal spoke, George's eyes scanned the wall behind her. List upon list of phone numbers and email addresses were taped up to the lower half, interspersed with handwritten notes held up with thumbtacks pressed directly into the wall. Dozens of signs hung above, telling kids to eat right, not to take drugs, to do their homework, and not to be a bully. A sign in the far corner showed a large rainbow flag flying on a black background. Below the flag, the sign said, "Support safe spaces for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender youth." Reading the word transgender sent a shiver down Georgia's spine. She wondered where she could find a safe space like that, and if there would be other girls like her there. Maybe they could talk about makeup together. Maybe they could even try some on.
Aww.
So yeah, this is why these signs are important.
Yes.
It's not to groom your child. It's not to turn your child gay. It's to give students who identify a feeling of safety.
Exactly.
And I don't understand why our schools don't want to have that. Like, our school board members are trying to shut that down.
It's because of our school board members. Yeah, and again, there's an example of a small group of people that are ruining it for such a large group of people because our teachers and our administrators want to support the LGBTQ community, but 2 of our school board members do not.
Right.
And one of them is maybe she does, but she's not using her platform or her voice to do anything about it. And then the other 2 are, but then they're sick of the fucking bullshit, so they're stepping down. So it's a whole, and I'm sure that's the case for lots of different districts, especially in fucking Florida.
And a lot of Moms for Liberty have won seats on school boards. So this is why we keep talking about you.
Yes.
This is why. Yeah. It's not that you're, constantly on our mind because you're great or we're jealous of you. Yeah. No, it's because we see that you're dangerous.
Yes.
And
exactly.
be dangerous to kids like George or Melissa.
But then the principal plays a larger role later on in the book, too, during the play. Melissa comes out to Kelly and confides in Kelly that, she's a girl. And the way this happens is, they're at school and Rick and Jeff say, he's such a freaking girl anyway. And then Kelly, tries to stick up for him and says, don't listen to them. They're jerks, said Kelly. You're not a girl. What if I am? George was startled by her own words. Kelly drew back in surprise. What? That's ridiculous. You're a boy. I mean, she pointed vaguely downward at George. You have a you-know-what, right? Yeah, but George trailed off and looked at the ground. She kicked a small rock that skipped into a tuft of grass. She didn't feel like a boy. They stood together in a heavy silence. Kelly's brow furrowed in thought. After a few minutes, she spoke. I thought about whether I was a boy once, back when I wanted to be a firefighter, and I thought all firefighters were boys. Is it like that? I don't think so, Kelly. George grabs Kelly's arm just above the elbow. Don't tell anyone. I won't. George's grip on Kelly's arm grew uncomfortable. Not even your dad. Not even my dad. So there you have it. She finally comes out to Kelly, and at home, they find the girly magazines.
Yes. The mom's really upset about it, right?
Yeah, she's not as, quick to accept this as his brother, or as her brother. So George's brother, whatever, Mom, he's gay. And then that's what they conclude, that she's gay instead of transgender. That just doesn't even, that doesn't even occur to them.
Yeah, it's not even a thought. And I think there was a time when George, when she was younger, would cross-dress and wear the mom's dresses.
Right. And they just thought it was a phase.
Yeah, because the mom says, oh, you grew out of that.
Yeah. So I think it's always been on the back of their minds that she might be gay.
Right.
Or he might be gay, according to them. That's why I was trying to figure out, what year this was. Because there was a time where, a lot of people didn't know what transgender was. Or maybe the mom is just so scared of their son living such a challenging life.
Yes.
And that is why a lot of parents do have a hard time accepting it when their child does come out as transgender, because no parent wants to see their child suffer.
Right.
But you have to get over that and see that they're suffering right now.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the whole, you're grooming your child, you're mutilating your child. No one is out here trying to make their child trans.
Exactly.
Because it's not an easy life for your child. Who wants to do that for their child?
And when you say mutilating too, no, bottom and top surgeries aren't a thing until after you're 18. That's a decision you make as an adult.
Right. It's not even happening, but of course this is the narrative that they're pushing.
It's the false narrative that they're pushing. Just like the litter boxes in the schools.
Right.
Which I had a conversation with a friend recently, and she was like, but didn't they put litter boxes in schools, and don't they allow students to identify as cats? I was like, no, that's the false narrative that the extreme right, such as Moms for Liberty and other extreme groups like the Proud Boys and the Three Percenters, are trying to make you think that schools are encouraging kids to identify as cats.
And you know what? Kitten ears are very popular with
that doesn't mean you think you're a fucking cat.
Yeah. Girls love it, and now they're banning it in schools.
Right. And the argument is, well, if I can't wear a hat, you can't wear cat ears. It's well, the cat ears are more of a headband.
Right.
And I don't think we should ban hats either, but you do have to draw a line somewhere.
Right.
And cat ears are a fucking headband. It doesn't mean that you need a litter box in your bathroom.
Dumbasses.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's I'll admit, I'm someone who has been duped and believed a rumor, but, once I was presented with more information, I changed my mind.
Right. And still, they'll still say the whole litter box thing. And I'm like, where are the pictures of this litter box?
Yeah, just because someone wrote it in a fucking tweet doesn't mean it's true.
And you guys say, do your own research. Find me the picture.
You do the research if you're going to make such an outlandish claim.
Right.
So back to the book. George is miserable because she thinks that Kelly's not her friend anymore.
And she stops talking to her for a little bit.
I think this is the time where Kelly's sort of figuring it all out.
Right.
But eventually, fast forward, Kelly's I have a great idea. And Kelly hashes this plan that they split the role of Charlotte.
Yes.
Because there's two performances. There's the matinee, and then there's the opening night. I don't know. There's two performances. Kelly says she'll do the first one. Then she'll mysteriously get sick. Or no.
No. She's going to pretend to go up on stage, and they're going to do a costume change.
Because Melissa is the stagehand. So all she has to do is when Kelly climbs down from her web, put on the costume, because the stagehands wear black anyway, and the costume is black, but with the spider legs and stuff. And so that's what they do.
Yes.
Right?
So Kelly's dad is going to be at the one show. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is George or Melissa is going to invite her mom to the show she's going to be in.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it's a secret. Nobody knows until the curtain pulls back and there's Melissa as Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. So what happens, their plan works. The whole time you're reading the book, you're oh my gosh, is this actually going to work? And it works. Kelly gives an amazing performance that her dad gets to see. And then George gives an amazing performance that her mom gets to see. But then her mom is kind of blindsided.
Yes.
But then the principal is there, and the principal...
Oh, and not only that, Miss Udell was pissed, too.
Oh, she was pissed.
She was coming for her.
But that's when the principal stops her.
So the side curtain moved, and Miss Udell stepped backstage, her face in a scowl. She headed towards George, but Principal Maldonado appeared directly behind her and put her hand on Miss Udell's shoulder. Then she whispered something into Miss Udell's ear. Miss Udell looked at George, Kelly, and finally Principal Maldonado. She raised a finger and opened her mouth, but then stopped. She looked over at the play, still in progress, and the audience beyond. She gave a weak smile to Kelly, and an even weaker smile to George, then stepped off stage. Principal Maldonado gave George a subtle nod, more with her eyelids than her chin. Then she stepped off stage as well. So she kind of intervened because she saw that Miss Udell was not happy about it.
That's right. Which every school needs a principal like this.
Yes.
And the laws in Florida are making it difficult for principals to be that safe place for diverse students.
And giving teachers like Miss Udell the authority to go in and chastise a child for being who they are.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a very important message. But then what happened? What does the principal say to George's mom after the show?
Melissa is with her mom, and she's not happy. She just said, well, that was unexpected. I didn't even know it was you at first. I thought it was supposed to be Kelly, but then I realized I was seeing my son on stage, and nearly everyone in the audience thought he was a girl. George's lips quivered, but her voice was clear. I did too. Did what? A bit of Charlotte's confidence still coursed through her. I already told you, I'm a girl. Mom's face turned to stone, and her mouth grew small. Let's not talk about this right now. George noticed Principal Maldonado heading toward them, a soft smile on her face. Congratulations, you were wonderful, she said to George, then turned to Mom. Your kid was great tonight. You just might have a famous star on your hands someday. Aww. Notice the gender neutral.
Your kid,
yeah.
I have just the biggest case of goosebumps right now. It's crazy.
And she goes on, and the mom says, thank you. Mom smiled politely. He certainly is special. Maldonado goes on, well, you can't control who your children are, but you can certainly support them. Am I right? Principal Maldonado's earrings sparkled in the auditorium light. Excuse us, said Mom, searching awkwardly in her purse for some imaginary item, but we've got to get home to dinner. Well, make sure that the star gets extra dessert tonight. Principal Maldonado put her arms around George. She smelled of vanilla. I certainly will, said Mom. That was beautiful, George. Really beautiful. Miss Maldonado put her lips close to George's ear and whispered, my door is always open, before she slipped away.
I'm gonna cry.
Like, I loved her. Like,
most valuable player in this book goes to Principal Maldonado.
And those were, I think, like the only two times that we see Maldonado in the book, right? During the fight, and then this time.
Yeah.
And I think maybe at the end too.
Right. But the importance is so strong. The significance is so big.
Yeah. So the next day, George gets home and her mom is waiting for her. And she says, come over here, G, come have a seat. And she tells her, you were great in the play yesterday. I know I acted surprised at first, but I'm really proud of you for being yourself. What did the kids at school say? George shrugged. Not much. Jeff was a jerk. What's new? You're one tough cookie. But the world isn't always good to people who are different. I just don't want you to make your road any harder than it has to be. Trying to be a boy is really hard, Melissa says. Mom blinked a few times, and when she opened her eyes again, a teardrop fell down her cheek. I'm sorry, G. I'm so sorry. She pulled George toward her and hugged her tight. You really do feel like a girl, don't you? Yeah, I do. Remember that time I was little when you found me wearing your skirt as a dress? Yes. And remember how I wanted to be a ballerina and it drove Scott crazy because he said I couldn't be because I was a boy? I remember the temper tantrum you threw when I didn't give you a tutu.
Oh.
Are you upset with me? Oh, baby, no. Oh. Mom stroked George's hair and sighed deeply. But I do think you need someone to talk to. I probably could use someone too. Oh. Someone who knows about these things.
Oh, I love it. And I know that this is just like best case scenario and this is not how it happens in every house, but it just makes you wish that this is how it happened in every household. And I love the part where George says, it's really hard to pretend to be a boy.
Right.
Like that's just shed so much light on things that we should be looking through as parents who are accepting, their transgender children. It's like, oh, well, you don't understand. I'm doing what's best for you because it's really hard to be a transgender person in society. But what they're not understanding is it's really hard to pretend to be something that you're not.
Right.
Since the beginning, there are testimonials or I guess experiences that have been shared by transgender people where they, ever since they could remember when they were 3 or 4 years old, experiencing, this desire to be something else.
And on that point too, I've heard this argument that, we can't have people, we can't encourage children to be trans because, they'll change their mind. And everybody seems to know somebody who was trans and changed their mind and apparently had top surgery. I've heard stories like this.
Right.
But when you look at the data, it's like less than 3% of people who have gone through with a surgery.
Exactly.
Regret it.
Right.
So
and maybe those people wouldn't regret it had they had the proper resources.
Right.
Or maybe those people wouldn't have gone through the surgery if they had had the proper resources, such as like a therapist that they could talk to.
Right.
Maybe like it could go both ways. But I think really the take home point here is not enough resources are available for people figuring out what their next step is.
Yeah.
Because, obviously here in Florida, it's, the legislature is taking away these resources and these opportunities for people of all ages to figure out who they are and what would make them truly happy.
And she's not my favorite person because she's a little controversial, but Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh,
she was pretty old when she decided to
Right.
do her transition.
Right.
Her whole life she lived as a man.
Right.
And was unhappy.
Right. So wrapping up this book, Kelly tells George that she has a surprise for her. I've got a surprise. My Uncle Bill's taking us to the zoo on Sunday. And at first George is like, it stinks at the zoo. And also that zoo is so boring. It's just like a zoo for like babies. And Kelly's like, no. He's going to drive us to the Bronx Zoo. They have over 600 species, tigers and gorillas and giraffes, not goats and sheeps. They've got panda bears. You're free Sunday, right? And, George reluctantly agrees. And Kelly continues, and she says, because I was thinking, the Bronx Zoo is super far away, and we won't see anyone there we know. You've never met my uncle, have you? George shook her head.
It must be about to rain.
He goes in the bathroom.
He's scared.
Sorry, Jennifer's adorable pit bull, Dallas, is hiding in the bathroom because I think a storm is coming.
Yep.
Wow, that's so
He's
funny.
my little meteorologist.
That's awesome. It's not awesome that he's so scared, but poor Dallas. Anyway, so Kelly grinned. Don't you get it? We can go as best girlfriends. We can dress up and everything. George's mouth hung open. George already knew Kelly was her best friend, but they had never been girls together before. George had never been a girl with anyone, if you didn't count being Charlotte. Did you hear me? Like a skirt? The hair on George's neck tingled just saying the word skirt. Sure. When girls dress up, they wear skirts. I have a lot to teach you about being a girl. Kelly stopped. My uncle's going to figure out something's up the moment I call you George, isn't he?
Oh, I love this part.
I know, it's the best part. George thought about her private name. She had never said it out loud before, not even to her friends in the magazines. You could always call me Melissa, she said now. Melissa, said Kelly, her eyes wide. I like it. That's a great name for a girl. She said it again, drawing out each sound. Melissa. That's perfect. George buried her chin in her shoulder and felt her cheeks grow warm. Are you okay, Kelly asked. Yeah, said George. It just sounds really good to hear. Aww.
So sweet. And I love how it's what an ally is.
Yes.
This is like a perfect example of a good ally. She's so supportive.
Yeah.
Like, everyone needs a Kelly in their life.
And like most books that we cover on this podcast, these books aren't just for people of the queer community. They're for parents, family members, friends.
Yes.
So yeah, they go to the zoo and they have a great time.
Yeah. Oh, and I love when they try on all the clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Because Kelly's like, here's my wardrobe, go crazy.
Yeah.
Try on all these outfits. And it says, Melissa tried on half a dozen outfits in a whirlwind. Before she could change out of one, Kelly had another ready and took half a dozen pictures of Melissa in each. Melissa didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she modeled the girl's clothing, with Kelly oohing and ahhing all the way. She held the fabrics delicately, as if they would break, and rubbed them softly between her thumbs and forefingers. For all the different outfits she tried on, though, Melissa couldn't keep her mind off the first. So she loved the first outfit she tried on, and that's what she ends up wearing to the zoo.
Yeah, that's so cute. That's such a cute picture that is painted of them just trying on different outfits.
Yeah. And so then when the uncle shows up, Kelly introduces her as Melissa, and the uncle has no idea. No idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they get to go to the zoo and have their first experience out as a full girl.
Mm-hmm. And then one more thing about this whole scene that I really feel like we should cover. So one more line I want to read from this scene is right at the end after they think they're ready to go, right? Melissa has something on her mind. So she stops and she says, Kelly? Melissa stopped her friend while she was upright. There's just one more thing. Melissa, stop worrying. You look perfect. It's just, I'm wearing boys' underpants. Melissa felt the wide band of elastic around her waist that held up her white boys' briefs. No one would be able to see them, but she would know all day that they were there. Ew, yuck, pull them off. Kelly was already at her dresser drawer. She handed Melissa a pair of light pink underwear covered in tiny red hearts. They were small and light. You can have them. Don't worry, they're clean. Are you sure? Melissa asked. Of course, I have too many pairs anyway. Melissa turned around and began to take off the purple skirt. You don't have to take it off. You can change under it. Skirts are awesome like that. Oh, right. Which is so true.
I know.
Melissa took off her own underwear, stepped into Kelly's, and pulled it up under her skirt. Other than the coolness of the fabric on her skin, she could barely tell she was wearing anything at all, which is just so great about women's underpants. Kelly jumped up when she heard a knock at the door. Okay, and that's when her uncle comes. I just couldn't let this episode end without reading that part.
Yeah, I love that part.
And I'm sure Mom's really hates that part.
Oh, of course. Well, I'm sure they hate this book cover to cover,
exactly.
Just for everything it stands for. Mm-hmm. I really like the part where when they're at the zoo and Kelly needs to use the bathroom.
Oh, right.
So this is the first time she goes to a girl bathroom, or the girls' restroom. Kelly said she needed to use the bathroom. Melissa tensed. There was no way she could make it back home without going as well. Oh, no. She looked down at her skirt. She couldn't go into the boys' bathroom looking like this. Mm-mm. Melissa and I will be right back, Kelly announced, grabbing her best friend by the hand before she could protest, dragging her right to the door with a sign with the word ladies and a stick figure wearing a triangle skirt. Kelly pushed open the heavy metal bathroom door as if it were nothing and pulled Melissa in. The air was cool, wet, and smelled of musk. The tiles were gray and green, not pink as Melissa had imagined. Most noticeably, there were no urinals. Only a row of stalls on the left and a row of sinks, mirrors, and dispensers oozing pink soap on the right. You okay? Asked Kelly. Melissa nodded but didn't say anything. She was standing in the girls' room. Not even the eloquent Charlotte had a word for how she felt in that moment. Melissa locked herself in a stall, delighted for the privacy. She lifted her skirt to see her underwear, covered in tiny red hearts. She pulled it down, sat, and peed, just like a girl. She didn't even tell Kelly afterward. That part of this magnificent day was her personal secret.
Oh.
And I thought that was, yeah. And especially with all the issues with bathrooms.
Yeah.
Like, that's all. They're not going in there to check out what anybody else is doing.
No.
They just want to handle their business, and that's it.
Which is why, I mean, the solution to the bathroom problem is easy. It's just all bathrooms are unisex with stalls. And and America is one of the only countries that makes it such a big deal.
Right.
Like, if you go to Europe, the bathrooms are just, like, unisex with doors. And each bathroom, it's not just like a stall that you could, like, easily push over. Yeah. It's like a secure room with a lock that you can go in and do your business and no one can see you.
Which, like, I want that, exactly. even if it was all girls. I still don't want a little kid peeping through a little gap.
That crack is so big.
Or crawling under. I don't feel comfortable going to the bathroom. And not because of...
Right.
Not because of anybody else being there.
Just you want to pee in private.
Yes.
You want to do your business in private. And apparently that's unique to America. Is that giant gap between the door.
Right. They can't figure out a solution for that.
Oh, man. Engineers, I don't know.
And can we have the wall go all the way up?
Right.
And all the way down? It's not hard.
I think it's just money. Because, like, the nicer, establishment you are in, the more private the bathrooms become. But it just sucks. Like, now privacy is a rich people pleasure.
Yeah.
So it's the same with, like, dental care and health care. No privacy. You can only pee in private if you're super rich, Jennifer. Right. Okay. America. So anyway.
This book is great.
Yeah, that's the end of our episode on Melissa by Alex Gino. Check our podcast notes for resources on what we talked about and a place where you can buy the book. Thanks for listening. And, it's funny, we've been going back and forth between what our catchy slogan at the end of our episode was going to be. And for the first few episodes, it was...
If you can't ban books.
If you've already read them?
Yes.
Which we like, but we kind of came up with a new one. Don't ban books.
Ban bigots.
And that's it.
Yes. This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer Mendoza and Courtney Green.
Be sure to follow our show on Twitter at Moms for Book Lib and Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Moms for Book Liberty with the number 4.
And leave us a review on Amazon Music or Apple Podcasts, or you can rate us wherever you listen to podcasts.